I would never have thought having a twin sister would cause so much trouble. I would never understand those twins who love each other to death and grow up to be each other's best friends. This is surely not the case for me. Growing up, my sister, let's call her Laura, and I were always compared with each other. On the surface, we were absolutely identical, but our personalities could not be any more different. I was the responsible, sensible one who did everything as expected of me, while Laura was carefree, who seemed to get away with everything. She had this uncanny ability to wiggle out of trouble, often leaving me to take the fall. I know this might sound like something that we would grow out of, but the thing is that this was not just sibling rivalry, it was a fundamental difference in how we approached life. Our upbringing is a strict religious household, and it did not help. Our parents had sky-high expectations for us, expecting us to adhere to a rigid set of standards. It's ironic that I was the one who actually tried to please them, but that made me grow sick and tired of them. They suffocated me, and the environment made me desperate for freedom. The moment I was able, I moved to a different city. I just wanted to be able to live for myself. My parents were very upset about my decision. They didn't want me to grow too ambitious, because a woman's duties apparently did not include excellence in the academic world. Yeah, they're that type of religious. Meanwhile, Laura stayed behind with our parents. She sort of basked in their approval and attention simply because she chose to stay. Our parents saw her as the dutiful daughter, the one who did not abandon the family. In their eyes, I was the rebellious one because somehow moving away meant turning my back on family values. I tried to distance myself from the whole drama. Life in my new city was liberating for a few good years. After finishing college, I got myself a decent job and a modest apartment, and a supportive circle of friends. I felt like I was finally carving out a space that was entirely my own. Admittedly, I didn't visit home very often. I guess that made the rift between me and the rest of the family even worse. But I dreaded going back so much, At every family gathering, I had to deal with the same old crap. When are you moving back? Why aren't you more like your sister? Are you still going to church? Why would you dress like that? Don't let any boys get too close, and God knows what else. Visiting home always was my least favorite part of any holiday. I skipped it whenever I could. I did feel a lot of guilt choosing to do this, but I sort of directed the energy into my work, taking overtime like it's nothing just so I could distract myself from the fact that I could not seem to get along with my own family. The bright side was that I was making a decent amount of money, enough for a comfortable life. So here's where all my trouble sort of blows up. One random day, I received a call from a stranger. He demands that I pay him back his money. I thought it was obviously a mistake and told him that he has the wrong number. But he knew my name, and worse, my address. Fortunately, I had moved to a nicer apartment not long before that, but it was still alarming that he knew where I used to live. The calls, they didn't stop. They kept coming every day for almost a week. I started to worry and look through my finances just to see if I might have made a mistake without realizing it. I started to notice some pretty unusual activity on my credit card statement that month. There were purchases that I did not make, loans I did not apply for, and I was so busy with work that I didn't even have time to manage my finances properly. I also realized at this point that I had lost 2 of my credit cards. When the calls inevitably happened again, I decided to sit down and talk to the caller. At first, he was threatening to hire people to invade my home and teach me a lesson. But the more we talked, the more I realized that he had no information about me right, except for my name and address. It seemed like he had been communicating with someone else who claimed to be me. That's when it hit me. Who else but my twin would come up with this idea? My conversation with him revealed things about my sister that I never thought before. It turns out that Laura, she's a gambler, and she has a problem that no one knew about. She was spiraling out of control, racking up debt that she could not pay. In her desperation, she used my identity to escape her financial mess, leaving me to deal with the fallout. I've always known Laura to be reckless, but this was way beyond anything I could have ever imagined. And as it turned out, the guy who called me is actually her ex-boyfriend, with whom she never officially broke up with because she ghosted him 2 months after making him send her a total of $70,000. He was a bar manager and met her a while working a late shift. So he helped her call a Uber. It all sounded like such a nice story except for the fact that she was not supposed to drink. My parents despise alcohol, and that she might have planned on scamming him the moment she saw how successful the bar was, because she told him that she was me the very first night that they met. Anyways, as you might have guessed it, the situation was just ugly. She had spent a total of $3,000 on my card and taken out a loan for $25,000. I guess I'm still luckier than that guy. Honestly, I'm not sure what to feel about this discovery. I made the mistake of thinking my parents should know the truth. I mean, they should, but they're chronically delusional, to say the least. I drove to their house during my sister's working hours. She's a waitress at a local restaurant, so then I could talk to them without her. I told them everything and showed them the bills from the credit card statement, expecting them to support me. Instead, they refused to believe that their beloved daughter could do such a thing. They were convinced that I was the one who had messed up, and now I had to crawl back to the people I had abandoned to ask for money. I was shocked to my core. I knew our relationship was very strained, but I didn't think that it was this bad. They threatened to disown me if I did not fix the situation. This was a really hard blow for me. The anger and hurt I felt were overwhelming. I had worked so hard to build a life for myself, but nothing seemed to matter. So, for the last week, I spent hours on the phone with banks, credit card companies, and anybody who could help me sort out this mess. I had to provide endless documentation to prove that I was not the one who had incurred these debts. It was a tedious and emotionally draining process, and every time I thought I was making progress, another issue would arise. My work started to suffer, and I found it hard to concentrate, constantly distracted. Well, my boss noticed, and I had to come up with an excuse to cover for my performance. The stress was affecting my health too. I lost weight, had trouble sleeping, and felt constantly on the edge. So, I don't know, I guess I just wanted to let it all out here before going back to reality of my life. I'm not sure what to do about it now, guys. I haven't called my parents, I haven't talked to Laura. Should I just confront her? I want to, but there's a part of me that just knows that's only going to make me feel even worse. So guys, I'm asking you, what do I do? Update number 1. Oh hey, thank you for the comments. I wanted to write an update, but finding time for it was difficult. I blinked, and 2 weeks have passed by already. I'll respond to some of the comments and questions of my family dynamics. See, I'll admit that it's very complicated and mostly unhealthy, and as far back as I can remember, Laura had a knack for getting into trouble and somehow pinning the blame on me. One of the earliest incidents was when we were about 6. Our parents had strict rules about not playing with certain items that were considered off limits. Laura was very curious about our father's antique coin collection. Of course, she wasn't careful, and a few coins ended up scratched. When our father discovered the damage and the scratches, Laura said that I was the one who had taken the coins out to play, and then asked him to forgive me. Despite my protesting, my father believed her. I had to go without dessert for a week. I learned early on that speaking up did not necessarily mean being heard. This continued to happen over and over, well into adulthood, and I guess at some point I just got used to it. Well, the reason why I brought this up was that I got back into therapy in the last week. Looking back, I often wonder why I kept letting Laura get away with it. Our parents had a clear favorite, and I was in the cast of the outrole, the one who should know better because I was more timid, and I did better in school than her. Laura was very social and humorous ever since she was a baby. She had a lot of friends, and maybe that made me feel insecure. Each time Laura got me in trouble, she would always come up with ways to make up for me, like letting me in on her circles, sitting with me during lunch, or letting me go to the mall with the, quote, cool kids. So I had spent years trying to live up to the impossible standards, not just please my parents, but also, I guess, Laura. Obviously, I would never have figured out these things if I had not been going to therapy. I'm grateful for it, but I'm also so drained by it. But I think the most important realization came to me the other day, that I was just running away from my problems. So I called Laura the other day and we met to talk. Let me tell you, it did not go very well. I drove 2 hours to get to the coffee shop where Laura and I had agreed to meet, only for her to show up half an hour late. When she finally arrived, she just sort of waltzed on in, completely unapologetic for making me wait. Well, to get straight to the point, Laura admitted everything as if she was proud of herself. She even said that I had to, quote, make up for being a nerdy freak who left home in her sister's care. The words stung more than I cared to admit. In her twisted logic, I was the villain, and I needed to pay. Guys, I was absolutely livid. But then something snapped inside me. This was Laura's game, and I was done playing by her rules. I stood up abruptly, startling her. I turned and I walked out, leaving her sitting there in silence, and I was done letting Laura dictate my life. I left with her credit card, well, that she used to ruin my financial standing. It was locked anyways, and I did not bother to ask for it back. Now, let me be honest, the last few days have been tough. I know that I want to stop this, but I'm not sure what to do. It took me quite some time to even write this post, so yeah, I'll think about it. And let me tell you what I'm going to do, it'll be drastic. If not, I'll never break free from this cycle. Update number 2. Thank you for all your comments and messages. I mean, really. 2 months have passed, and this time I have let a lot to update you guys on. I think you can just safely say that I've officially been done with being a nice girl in the story. So back to where we dropped off, yeah. I figured out I wanted to do it. And yes, it was absolutely drastic, like I said, so I think this is the worst thing I've ever done to somebody, but strangely, I don't feel guilty. I know some of you are probably going to judge me, but honestly, at this point, I don't care. My life has been hell because of her, and it's time for me to stand up. So, what did I do? You're probably wondering. I signed up to be an adult entertainer. Yeah, you heard me right. Of course, I signed up using her name. Here's the thing, though. To sign up, you need a legit identification card. I told them I lost mine, and then I asked that ex-boyfriend of Laura to help. He's a bar manager, after all, and his network in the nightlife industry is pretty darn good. At the same time, he's literally desperate to get his money back, and he wants something that he doesn't have. That doesn't involve a lawsuit, because as a bar manager, he does have a good reason to stay as far away from the authorities as he can. I did not become a stripper, if that's what you're wondering, no. I didn't have any intention to enter that line of work, even though I have nothing against people who do it. I just needed it on paper, which was pretty easy to fake if you know someone in the industry. The only thing I did in that bar was sit down with Laura's ex-boyfriend once or twice to talk through what was going on. I guaranteed him what I was going to do. I'm going to get the money back for the both of us, and I guess I was his best bet because he reluctantly agreed to help. I mean, what's he got to lose, right? He's already pretty desperate. So I got paid for being an adult entertainer with a check, and the name on the check is Laura's. I mailed the check to Laura's restaurant, and I wanted to give her a way out. So I did not mail it to our parents yet, but it seemed like it did cause some trouble at her work, because she was livid. She called me furious, as if she had never done anything wrong in her entire life. It was ridiculous, to say the least. I laid it out for her plain and simple. Repay the debt, or I would send the check to our parents. I could see the gears turning inside of her head. She realized she was cornered and had no choice but to agree. So, for the past 3 weeks, she's been paying me $2,000 a week, half of which is directly sent to her ex. Of course, she doesn't know about his involvement. This is better than nothing, but I know I have to be careful. I feel like she's going to figure something out soon, and I want to be prepared. So, I'll update you guys. Update number 3. So, it turned out that I spoke a little too soon. Laura did not send that money from her restaurant job. I know, it's only been 2 weeks, but so much has happened, guys. Instead of earning the money honestly, Laura started stealing from our parents to pay me back. I found out when my parents called furious and hurt, telling me that they were straight up disowning me. I was so confused, and at first I thought they found out about the truth. But then they blamed me for making Laura steal money to fund my lavish city girl lifestyle. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. Here I was trying to clean up the mess Laura made, and she managed to twist the situation yet again. She had not learned her lesson at all. Laura thought that she could outsmart me once again, but this time I was determined not to let her get away with it. I knew my parents would not believe me without concrete evidence, so I abided time. I told them that I would get back to them soon and practically ghosted them. I played along, acting as if I was just oblivious as they were to Laura's scheme. Meanwhile, Laura put on her usual act, pretending that everything was fine, and continued to send me money. But I knew that she was living on borrowed time. Our parents have caught her stealing, so now her only option is to keep stealing after our parents scolded the spoiled child that made her do this, or come clean with them about the truth. So during this period, I kept a close eye on my credit report and financial accounts, ensuring that there was no new fraudulent activity. Laura was desperate and might try to drag me down further if she felt cornered. It was a constant source of anxiety, but I knew I had to stay vigilant. I couldn't let her win this time. I also started gathering every bit of evidence that I could. I talked to every one of Laura's friends, people whom she had fallouts with, asking them if the reason why they're not friends anymore has anything to do with money. Surprisingly, my predictions were spot on. Laura has been in trouble for a long time, borrowing money and scamming anyone that she can possibly think of. A piece of good news that I could share is that my credit card payments have been refunded. The loan is still there, which is unpleasant, but I know that I have to be patient here. Update number 4. Hey guys, it's me again. Well, it turned out that the opportunity came a lot faster than I expected. It's been 3 weeks, but my life has completely changed since the last time I was on here. So finally, the moment came when I felt I had enough evidence. I gathered everything I collected. Emails, messages, statements from people who had lent Laura money under false pretenses. I even asked her ex-boyfriend to send me photos of them together, back when they were still meeting at bars and clubs with all sorts of questionable people. I invited Laura over to my apartment. When she arrived late as usual, I wasted no time in laying everything out in front of her. I gave Laura one last chance to come clean and repay the debt honestly. Her reaction was explosive. She refused, went absolutely ballistic on me, and even had the audacity to accuse me of stealing her identity and threatened to sue me. Yep. It was ridiculous considering she was the one who started this entire fiasco. I knew it was time for the final blow. As soon as she left, I called our parents and asked if I could come over to talk. They were reluctant, but they agreed, and I drove straight to their house. Sitting down with them, I could see the weariness on their faces. They had aged so much in the past few months, dealing with everything, and honestly I felt a pang of guilt. Not because I was at fault, but because I knew this would hurt them deeply. But the truth, it has to come out. I laid everything out on the table. Literally and figuratively, I showed them the evidence, explained each piece, and had people on speakerphone to corroborate my story. As I spoke, I watched their faces change from disbelief to sorrow. When I finished, there was a long silence. My parents looked at each other, then back at me, and my mother had tears in her eyes. My father looked like he had been punched in the gut. They didn't say much, and in the following hours, our parents called Laura, who was supposedly at work, and made her come home immediately. It didn't help her case when she finally arrived at the doorstep, and she was drunk. I guess she was really stressed from her conversation with me, so she headed to the bar, or something. My parents were livid, and they confronted her in front of me. Well, she tried to deny it at first. Laura was furious with me, of course. She accused me of turning our parents against her as if I was making everything up. Laura stuck to her lies, insisting she had good income and did not have to steal from our parents if it was not because of my evil request. That's when I decided to tell my parents about the check. I told them that people at her work have been calling me to complain about Laura's check from her dirty job. Well, obviously, it's a lie, but I just needed a good reason for them to go look at the piece of paper. Hesitant but curious, my parents agreed. They went through her room while I stayed downstairs with Laura, who was glaring daggers at me. It didn't take long for them to find the check. When they came back, the shock on their face, well, it said it all. They could not believe that their favorite child had not only been lying to them, but has also been living a secret life as an adult entertainer. Laura tried to claim it was me who was the adult entertainer, but by this point her credibility was gone. I calmly told them about her gambling problem, and I explained how she might have become an adult entertainer just to pay off the debts. Everything I said made sense, and for the first time my parents believed me. Even though not everything was the truth, but that doesn't matter. When I left, Laura was on the floor crying and asking for forgiveness. I felt bad for my parents, but I walked away. I haven't talked to them in 2 days now, but I know that I will eventually have to give this drama a closure, and I'll write an update when I do. Final updates. Update number 5. Hey guys, thank you for checking in on me. I'm doing great. So 2 months has gone by. I could finally say that this drama is over. I guess this will be my last post. So after the confrontation, my parents decide to disown Laura, leaving her with nothing. I'll be the sole inheritor of all the assets, so I didn't ask Laura to pay me back the loan that she's taken out anymore, because I know our parents will do that on her behalf, but I did ask them to pay back Laura's ex-boyfriend who helped me through it all. We eventually became good friends, and it's still funny to me how he threatened to sue me at first, the very first time we spoke. As for me, my relationship with my parents remained strained. The years of being the scapegoat had taken their toll, and even though they were now knowing the truth, the damage to our relationship could not be overdone overnight. But at least they're finally understanding of what happened. Of course, I never told them that I was the one who briefly became an adult entertainer just to take revenge on my sister. That was a secret I tried to keep. I continued with my life, and Laura, meanwhile, she ended up in rehab to deal with her gambling problem. I heard through some mutual friends that she was struggling, but I didn't reach out. I couldn't. I'd given her so many chances each time she had decided to go crazy on me. This time she had to face the consequences of her own actions. But guys, honestly, I couldn't care less if she's still mad at me, but let me know. Do you think that I went too far by making her seem like a stripper? Let me know what you would have done.